Well, hello. My name is Mark Cogsall, and I am speaking with you from a University of Missouri research farm in west central Missouri called the Horticulture and Agroforestry Research Center. I am an adjunct professor on the School of Natural Resources currently. Formerly, I also worked for the Forest Service based at Purdue University. And through that connection, I've been asked to, along with my videographer and colleague, Cheryl Reeker, who's behind the camera, to explain to you a few things about how we propagate trees, clonally propagate hardwood trees that you may find to be helpful and interesting. As a point of information, we are at mid-April of 2022. That's the timeline. Also, we are located, this research farm is located approximately at 39 degrees north latitude. So for people who are up in the Lake States or in Canada, be aware. This is the timing and this is what we can achieve in terms of results at that latitude in this time of the year. So hopefully that'll be okay. So I was asked by my Forest Service colleagues to provide you with some insights on propagating hardwood trees and whether that propagation effort is focused on timber, as it is focused on wildlife enhancement, it is focused on an applied breeding program that's targeting either one of those or both of those outcomes. That's the status that I'm coming from here. So today, I want to ensure that we have, by the time we're all finished, you have insights into how we do it, how I do it. It's very much an individual thing. Some of this you can learn online, some of which you can learn from textbooks, which I'll give you some examples of in a moment. And some of it, you just have to do it. Some of these particular approaches, they are very hard to do, meaning your results for the amount of energy expended is going to be not fantastic. And also, it is not always predictable. Unlike, say, propagating pines or spruces or things like that, you can more or less have a pretty good understanding of what you're going to get at the end of the propagation effort. In working with the tree species that I'm going to talk about today, some of them are going to provide you with some heartburn in terms of results, not only in the greenhouse, but also years from now due to compatibility issues, particularly in the oaks, particularly in Quercus rubra, which I'm going to show you how to do here in a minute. So be aware. The best thing that you could ever possibly do is not just look at a video of me, but more importantly, get together with someone who is very experienced, who is a grower, who is a plantsman or plantswoman, who has experience working with these genera or some closely related genera. How you manipulate the plants before you ever cut two pieces of wood and put them together. What do you do to the understock? What do you do to the scion wood from the tree that you really like for whatever reason? How do you store it? There are a lot of subtleties involved. It is not rocket science. It's easy. However, it does take some, shall we say, focus on making sure that you do it, quote unquote, within a certain set of parameters. Meaning, how wet do you keep the understock? How dry do you keep it? How hot do you keep the greenhouse? Every single taxa that we're dealing with here, we can look at. This happens to be a Chinese chestnut. Hopefully you can see that. This happens to be a black walnut Juglans nigra, not Juglans regia, nigra. This is a nut cultivar grafted tree that is about a month old. This is one that happens to be the same tree, same species, Juglans nigra, eastern black walnut, but it's not a month old, it's only 9 days old. Now, maybe later on we can take a close-up of this one. It is starting to grow, but it takes a little while to get going, if that makes sense. But boy, when it does, it grows like corn. I mean, it grows very, very fast as a young grafted tree. So we can perhaps look at those in terms of close-ups here, you can get more aware of the architecture about how do you put two pieces of wood together. So I mentioned resources to you earlier. Online resources, of course. There are many. Perhaps like this. We'll see. But also, I want to bring it to your attention, perhaps some of you in this audience are aware of an international organization called, it has a long name, the International Plant Propagator Society, which is IPPS for short. I strongly encourage that those of you who are really interested in this to seek out people who are members of the IPPS, International Plant Propagator Society. They are a wealth of information, a wealth of knowledge. Many of the things that people who are IPPS members do as a matter of normal practice, it's not written down, okay? So you have to rely on people who are very experienced, people who have gray hair, because there aren't that many people who propagate black walnuts, for example, in this fashion. Why do we do it anyway? Why do we go through this hassle? And it's a hassle. I'll show you later. We go through it because in the case of black walnut specifically, can you root a cutting of black walnut? The answer is no. Can you grow it in tissue culture? Yes, you can. You can grow it in a test tube story, and you can get shoot growth, proliferation, vigorous, but you can't get those shoots to root. So there's a breakdown in the process. So that's why we have to do it the, I'm going to use air quotes here, old-fashioned way, where you put two pieces of wood together, because you can't propagate them any other way. And you can't just reliably expect it, if you collect seed from a tree that you like, for whatever set of criteria, that you can actually get in the seedling offspring, the open pollinated seedling offspring, will you get the same result? The answer is no. Walnuts outcross, this species of walnut outcross at least 95% of the time, if not 100%. Depends on the tree, depends on the year, the spring season, the spring weather, the temperatures. In the case of red oak, which we'll talk about also, red oak is Quercus in general, the genus Quercus, it is 100%, that I know of, it is 100% outcrossed. And it is exceedingly heterogeneous in terms of the seedling population derived from a single mother tree in a given year, okay? So in order to maintain some desired set of characteristics, you can't rely on seeds, okay? So you can try in red oak, you can root them as cuttings, been there, done that, but the results are pretty darn minimal. It's very poor. Can you do it? Sure, you can do it. But it takes a lot of effort, a lot of trial and error. And so that's something else to be aware of. So grafting trees is just easier. So perhaps that might provide some insights. Same thing with Castanea. This is about a 3-week-old Chinese chestnut, Castanea mollissima, grafted tree. This scionwood happens to S-C-I-O-N. Scionwood comes from a tree that, for whatever set of criteria, it is exceedingly desirable. Particularly here in central Missouri, we are focused on developing new cultivated varieties for human nut consumption. Okay, edible nuts. Same thing with black walnut. That's why we are growing them here. So, not timber. Okay, other places, like with my colleagues at Purdue, they grow them for timber purposes rather than nut stories, if you will. So, let me show you just real quick. I spoke to you about IPPS. We'll take another close-up of this later. This happens to be written by an Englishman who is this label that I used earlier. He's a real plantsman. He knows what he's talking about. And it provides a lot of insights into, it has Castanea in here, it has Quercus in here, it has Juglans in here. It even has Abies and Picea and Pinus in there in terms of how do you do it, okay? How do you propagate trees of those different genera? So I highly recommend this book. One that is a bit older, still has value, by Mr. Gardner. This came out about, I should have looked it up before we started the film. It's been a number of years ago, but it still has relevance to what we do. So there's that. Every now and then you got to look at your notes just to make sure. We talked about how trees are outcrossed. They don't come true from seed. Other reasons why we would want to propagate these trees is because of these specific nut characteristics that we're interested in. Very short seasoned growing seasons, for example. You can grow them further north. Perhaps some of the people in the audience might be interested in that. Versus some that cannot grow that far north because the season length is too long. So you can avoid black walnut. I'm going to focus on this just for a moment. Black walnut, it is about as susceptible to late spring frosts, like we're going to have here tonight, here in central Missouri. It is about as susceptible to frost as a tomato plant in your garden. They are super susceptible. Therefore, you want them to leaf out much later than normal, so you avoid the frost. And if you're in the business of collecting nuts for edible human consumption, what else do you want to do? You want to have that season from the time it begins to flower to the time you harvest the nuts. In some cases, we have representatives for that season length, the nut harvest season length of 100 days. That's pretty fast. We have other ones in the same plantation, the same story, the same age, same everything, but they're a different variety. It's not a 100-day season, it's 160 days. So that's the variation. That's one simple example of what the variation is that we can exploit if we wish to. Okay? So there's just an example. But today we're supposed to be talking about propagating plants. How we do it. Much of it I mentioned before. It is based on experience. It is based on who taught you and how long ago, in my case. It depends on what works for me or works for you. It also has to do with how do you manipulate. I grow these trees in cute little pots, as you see here, and we grow them in a greenhouse. How do you manipulate them in the greenhouse? Manipulate, meaning, how do you manipulate the rootstock? This is a red oak. Can you see the little leaves? Can you see the little growth right there? That little pink growth? That when the growth on the understalk hasn't been grafted yet, we're going to do that here in a bit. When the growth gets to this stage, now's the time, okay? How heavy is it? How much water is it? How wet is this before you ever cut into it to put a scion piece on? In some cases, you can be pretty flexible in terms of the moisture regime within the pot, okay? We'll talk about that a little bit later. And with red oak, it's easy. It's very forgiving, okay? That's what I'm trying to get to. That's the word I was looking for. In the case of black walnut, if you water walnuts the same, quote unquote, the same as you would a red oak, are you going to have problems? Oh my, yes, you sure are. Because what will happen is when you put the scion piece from the tree that you like onto the seedling understock that you have available to you at the time, if the rootstock is too wet, it'll flood, it'll bleed, and that bleeding process will cause that union that we are all striving for, to put the two pieces of wood together to make into one new tree. It'll collapse, it'll die. So walnut is very fussy. Red oak is not. Another thing real quick is we talked about moisture just ever so briefly, but talking about temperature in a greenhouse. I'm speaking to you in a little space that is adjacent to two big greenhouses, which we may take a peek at here later on today, because they're just full of plants right now. Springtime, it's busy, it's full. Very, very active time of year. We have in this set of greenhouses, we have little oak trees, we have chestnut trees, we have walnut trees, and we have a whole bunch of other stuff too. But those are the ones that I'm fixating on today. Each of them have different, and you can get that from these books I mentioned to you earlier. different genera, guess what? Have different temperature requirements. Okay? In order for them to get them to do what you want them to do, to heal up quickly meaning 10 days or less, quick, that's fast for a tree, you have to keep this at a certain temperature to allow this union, this callousing, as they call it, to occur fast. You don't want it to spread it out over 3 or 4 weeks. If you do, you just throw the tree away. It's not going to live. Or if it does, it won't be. It'll be poor in terms of its growth. It won't be like this. It'll be like that after the end of the summer. Never mind the end of April. So you have to manipulate the moisture we talked about. We have to manipulate the temperature. Getting callousing to work in a walnut tree. What do you need? Oh, this is Fahrenheit, guys. Sorry, I'm not centigrade. It's about 75 to 80 degrees. That's optimal for walnuts. Contrast that with apples. I'm sure some people in the audience know a lot more about apples than I'll ever know. And what's the optimal range of temperature in order to get apples to callus? It's about 45 degrees Fahrenheit. So those are two radical examples of both are deciduous angiosperm trees, but one has a 45 degree, 40, 50 at the most. You don't need to heat your house and spend the money on the natural gas to propagate apples or crab apples or whatever you have at an 80 degree temperature. That's just wasting money. But in walnuts you do. So there's that. There's some tricks to the trade we can get to, so we don't have to heat the house to 75 degrees all the time.